Hello and welcome to Manger's Study. I am your host, CJ, and this is episode 11 on Project 2025. As I'm recording this, it is the 10th of August 2024 at about midnight-ish, and there are 87 days until midnight on Election Day. All right, we are on page 133 or 166 on the PDF of Project 2025's Mandate for Leadership, the beginning of chapter, section, part, whatever, 5, Department of Homeland Security. Quote, our primary recommendation is that the President pursue legislation to dismantle the Department of Homeland Security, unquote. I don't want to kiss Ken Cuccinelli, who wrote that sentence, because I don't really like him, or at least I don't like a lot of his policies all that much. But if I ever see him in person, and he whispers this into my ear, I'm not making any promises that I won't kiss him. Full on the mouth, with tongue. Recommendations from Project 2025, we're looking at taking apart the DHS and put its various agencies or responsibilities into other departments. They want to make a new department focused on border and immigration. They want to make the Secret Service two services, one for protection, the other for financial elements, and they want to put the Coast Guard either back to the DoD, the Department of Defense, or to the Department of Justice, except in times of war. Finally, and it makes my little heart a putter. They want to privatize the TSA. For the DHS, though, it does make other recommendations just in case you can't completely get rid of the Department of Homeland Security, such as ensuring the staffing of the political personnel of the department. What Project 2025 wants to do is to make acting heads of the department prior to the Senate confirmation. The way it works right now is that you have somebody that you want to make a department head or a head of the department, and you put them up to Senate vote. And if the Senate says yes or no, it doesn't really matter, because for as long as the Senate is deliberating, they're not the actual head. What Project 2025 wants to do is to make these people the acting head, even prior to their Senate confirmation. That makes a little bit of sense, I suppose. Whatever. This one is a little bit spicy. They want to stop giving work visas to cheap foreign labor so that Americans can do those jobs instead. I am quite sure that all Americans will super enjoy higher prices, so that a very small amount of Americans might benefit from the work that companies are legally forced to either hire Americans for, or they're just not going to hire anyone at all for. That was sarcasm. Regardless, Project 2025 continues saying that Border Patrol should restart and expand their horseback-mounted border patrol. Fun times, I suppose. Also, Project 2025 wants to clear the records and files of people alleged by Secretary Mayorkas of whipping migrants. That's actually something I didn't hear about until I was doing a little bit of research on this, but it does seem a little bit odd to have that line item in here. This is a grand sweeping project for the American government, and this is just really kind of like almost like a jab at that particular person in that particular incident. It just seems a little bit out of place to me, but that is what Project 2025 wants. Project 2025 also believes that ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, should do its job and remove more immigration law violators. Also, we should stop giving student visas to students from enemy nations, however they want to define enemy, I suppose. Yeah, really looking through everything, it's very much Project 2025 wants to increase enforcement of deportation, and they want to reduce the number of visas available to foreigners. ICE should also get more money, according to Project 2025, including for additional beds for people that are coming in and they need to hold them. So need more beds for all these people. I suppose that's actually kind of a nice thing, is that they want these people to have beds while they wait for them to figure out what they're going to do with them. And they want to have an increase in various officers in order to enforce the laws. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services should, according to Project 2025, end its current open borders policy. USCIS has been ignoring legislation and statutes, according to Project 2025, by easing asylum eligibility, creating programs to allow more immigration in. Project 2025 thinks those should stop. Also, the U.S. should be kicking out people who fraudulently gain entry and naturalization, according to Project 2025. Oh, and also Project 2025 wants to increase the cost of legally immigrating to the United States. Project 2025 also wants to spend more money on the border wall, and they want to increase a port of entry infrastructure. Project 2025 says that benefits to unaccompanied minors has resulted in an increase in those unaccompanied minors, which includes all the bad stuff that comes with that, such as trafficking. And instead, Project 2025 wants to return those unaccompanied minors back to their home countries. In general, Project 2025 wants to make it harder for immigrants to seek asylum. I'm going to skip through a little bit here. There's just a lot of boring stuff that doesn't say much more than Project 2025 wants to restrict immigration and deport those who immigrated illegally. There's a lot of that going on in there. An interesting tidbit is that Project 2025 wants the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security to be given more power to deter a mass migration event, including by waiving some regulations and whatnot to ensure the integrity of the border. So if the Secretary of DHS sees that through the news or whatever that there is a mass migration event, that a lot of people from, let's say, El Salvador or wherever are coming to the United States, the Secretary should, according to Project 2025, have the power to redirect and do some stuff to ensure that that mass immigration event doesn't happen. So in regards to this section here regarding immigration, I think that the problem here is less in what Project 2025 wants to do with immigration agencies, but rather on immigration law in the U.S. and other U.S. actions that result in this high immigration. People who think similarly to Project 2025, which includes people on both the right and the left, they want to keep the U.S.'s borders relatively more closed. Whether this is for economic reasons, for example, the fallacious reasoning that immigrants are just taking American jobs, or national security reasons, which basically casts every non-American as a suspected terrorist, or just simply xenophobic reasons, for example, that immigrants will change the character of the country and will not integrate into their neighborhoods, but will rather change the culture of America and the neighborhoods in which they reside. A large swath of people have varying reasons to be against immigration. Imagining a perfect-ish world in which border patrol, immigration control, etc. are all nonpartisan, non-political, and they're just simply enforcers of the law as written, which honestly, more or less what Project 2025 is calling for, then what matters isn't the various agencies and sub-agencies. What matters are the laws and the policies from the political sector of government. I think that insofar as we should be spending money on the border, it should be rather easy to immigrate to the United States, basically just keeping people out because they're criminals, or possibly due to like health-related issues, like health risk issues. Other than that, it should be incredibly easy to immigrate into the United States, I think. A lot of people in Project 2025 think something different. Any economic problems based on immigrants typically aren't because of the immigrants themselves, but rather are because of domestic or local policies, whether it's jobs or welfare or housing or any other economic issue. The problem isn't that people want to move there. It's that the local regulations, the state regulations, and or the federal regulations make it too onerous. The immigrants aren't causing the problems that a lot of people are seeing. They're simply making the already existing problem more visible. There are non-economic issues that people take issue with. I'm not going to address those here, but for any economic issues, typically that's not the fault of the immigrants. That's the fault of the local, the state, the federal government regulations that are causing those kinds of problems. At any rate, let us go ahead and look at FEMA now. Hopefully, Project 2025 decides to update the FEMA death camps that I've been promised are coming. No. So, Project 2025 says that FEMA has budgetary issues because states will use FEMA funds as port projects that don't actually help with anything. Big shocker there for everyone, I'm sure. Project 2025 says that should stop, and I agree, I suppose. But unfortunately, Congress doesn't agree because they're the ones who are doling out the pork. So it probably won't stop. Sadly, nothing for death camps in there. Just a bunch of boring budgetary stuff. Next up, however, Project 2025 is talking about cybersecurity and infrastructure security agency, the CISA or CISA. They are supposed to just worry about the .gov system, cyber defense, and coordination of infrastructure for security, resilience, things of that nature. And that's all Project 2025 thinks they should be doing. One thing that Project 2025 believes that CISA should stop doing, and I agree with Project 2025 here, is their malinformation efforts. Quote from Project 2025, "The federal government cannot be the arbiter of truth," unquote. Love that, beautiful, amazing, whatever. CISA should help with election security, according to Project 2025, but only insofar as they assist state and local offices to have, quote, "good cyber hygiene," unquote, as Project 2025 puts it. I like that phrase, and I think that if you're going to have a government agency looking after cybersecurity and infrastructure security, that would be a good thing for them to look after. The U.S. Coast Guard should, according to Project 2025, be sized to the needs of great power competition. Project 2025 really likes that phrase. The Coast Guard should be focused on protecting the U.S. home waters and exclusive economic zone, according to Project 2025. The EEZ, the exclusive economic zone of the U.S., is 200 miles from the American shore. Apparently, this is something new to me. China has had fishing vessels very, very far away from Chinese shores. For example, at least once off of the Galapagos Islands off of South America, and they don't take kindly to the U.S. wanting to board their vessels to ensure compliance with what I'm assuming is international, is kind of an international law kind of thing, from an AP News article linked in the description below. Quote, "The Coast Guard's unprecedented voyage was prompted by growing alarm from activists and governments in Latin America over the activities of China's distant water fishing fleet, the world's largest. Since 2009, the number of Chinese-flagged vessels spotted fishing in the South Pacific, sometimes for months at a time, has surged eightfold to 476 last year. Meanwhile, the size of its squid catch has grown from 70,000 tons to 422,000 tons, a level of fishing that some scientists fear is unsustainable even for a resilient species," unquote. So Project 2025 wants to make sure the Coast Guard can address that kind of thing, which, I guess kind of makes sense. Project 2025 does think that the Coast Guard's mission should be scaled down to match budgeting. So I suppose that's a first for Project 2025. So far as anything remotely military is concerned, that they don't want to just throw money at it. Project 2025 does want to increase the Coast Guard fleet, however, which means that if this part of Project 2025 is acted on, we'll probably see Horton's Law come to fruition. Horton's Law is that politicians can be counted on to keep all of their bad promises and abandon all their good ones. They do want to increase the Pacific presence of the Coast Guard because, well, China. For recruitment efforts, Project 2025 thinks that the Coast Guard should stop using wokeness and instead do something else. They don't exactly say what. Next, we have the Secret Service. You can tell this was written before July 13th, 2024, because Project 2025 says, quote, "The U.S. Secret Service must be the world's best protective agency," unquote. It does note that it allowed Vice President-elect Kamala Harris to be inside the DNC offices in D.C. when there was a pipe bomb outside. So with that and other things, Project 2025 has some ideas to put the Secret Service back on the right track. Mostly, what Project 2025 wants to do is they want to separate the protective duties of the Secret Service and the financial duties. The Secret Service is part of the Department of Treasury, I think, still, although this isn't the DHS. Maybe they're part of the DHS now, but kind of sort of part of the Treasury. They were traditionally part of the Treasury Department, and it wasn't until the assassination of one Abraham Lincoln fella that the Secret Service for the Department of Treasury started. There's a history lesson here. Regardless, what Project 2025 wants to do is they want to take those protective Secret Service things and separate them from basically everything else. All non-protective investigations should go to Justice, the Department of Justice, or back to Treasury, where the Secret Service initially started. This mission focus would, according to Project 2025, also increase morale and relevant skills of the Secret Service officers. If Secret Service officers have to do a lot of different types of things, from protection to financial crimes and investigations, that's two different things. So if we have this group of people in the Secret Service doing the protection thing and this other group of people doing financial, that would increase morale, that would increase the relevant skill sets of all the people involved in this section. That I think this makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And it should have been something probably done a long time ago, is to keep these two different sections that have very different missions, just make them separate agencies. For the last section of this episode, let's take a look at the TSA. Project 2025 notes that the TSA is both the regulator and regulated organization responsible for screening, which seems like it might be a bad idea. When conservatives are telling you to look at the privatization efforts of such free market bastions such as Canada and Central Europe, you know there's something wrong with the current US implementation of something. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. Next episode, we're going to start on page 159 or page 192 of the PDF and begin by looking at the Management Directorate, which I'll admit I have no idea what that is. I guess I'm going to figure it out. Until next episode, take it easy.